Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of 3 Wide. This week, the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series and I were at Pocono Raceway for the Gander Outdoors 400. Overall, a race that I thought was pretty good with me being there. I don't know if the TV coverage was different to make people think it was a different kind of race. But overall, I feel like this is one of the better Pocono races in recent history with the way that the race was performed. But don't get me wrong, I still believe that Pocono needs some improvements to make better racing happen. And maybe it's the Cup cars that they're currently driving. Maybe when the new car gets announced in a couple of years, hopefully sooner than later, maybe Pocono will be one of the better races on the schedule. Just some things I think that we need to look to improve on for next year when the Cup Series comes back to Pocono for both dates is a way to make these restarts a little bit better. That bottom lane, if you had 4 new tires and the guy next to you had 100 lap tires and he was on the top, he would just destroy you on the restarts and the bottom couldn't get going. And with these cars not liking the air in front of them in these flat turns at Pocono, I feel like spraying down that PJ1 to potentially spread out the groove can make this an overall better track and have better racing for years to come with this current car. And let's not forget what the PJ1 is originally used for in drag racing, to have the cars get a good launch off the starting line to send them on down the straightaway. And what's Pocono? Essentially 3 long straightaways with a couple of turns put in there. This way, if you put that PJ1 there, they can get some nice grip off the corner. We could see people flying down the straightaways and potentially keeping their runs to make passes. So now with all that being said, we'll get into my 3 takeaways from the Gander Outdoors 400. Number 1, the youth tries to move in. Going into this season, the NASCAR Cup Series was built on the youth movement coming to take over the sport, with guys like Chase Elliott, Daniel Suarez, Eric Jones, Ryan Blaney, Alex Bowman, William Byron, Darrell Wallace Jr., and Kyle Larson to be looked upon to be the ones to take the reins. And so far this season, it really hasn't panned out. But in this race at Pocono, the youth looked like they could move in and take their spot to where NASCAR's been pushing them this season. The top 2 of the youth movement on Sunday to me were Daniel Suarez, who ended up finishing 2nd, and he led 29 laps. He also started on pole after the inspection debacle. The other was Chase Elliott, who led 14 laps and got his 2nd stage win of the season where he won stage 1. The other drivers that are part of this youth movement that had a good day were Eric Jones, who ended up finishing 5th and led 11 laps. William Byron, who ended up finishing 6th. He led 10 laps when he stayed out on some pit strategy. And Alex Bowman, who's on that playoff bubble, ended up getting a 3rd place finish to strengthen his spot in the playoffs. So now we'll see as the season goes on if these young drivers can keep this momentum up and maybe for some of them get their first wins of the season and or their first wins of their career, or if this will just be an outlier for the rest of the season. Now on to number 2. Kyle Busch matches Kevin Harvick. And a little bit of deja vu at the Pocono Raceway, where last year at this time Kyle Busch won the 2nd race at Pocono. And what do you know, the 2nd time around this year Kyle Busch wins again. But this time it's his 6th win of the season to match Kevin Harvick in their fight for the championship. And now let's see if Busch can be on what will feel like his 973rd roll of the season, where he could look to build on multiple wins in a row. Now on to number 3. Chevy takes a step forward. And what can only be described as a colossal disaster of a season so far for Chevy, where they only have 1 win, where it was at the Daytona 500 with Austin Dillon. Now it seems like Chevy has taken a step forward, and it started this week at Pocono. Now they've had some blips on the radar where they've looked pretty good at non-aero specific tracks such as Bristol and Martinsville, but at Pocono, where aero plays a huge role in how the cars cooperate and perform, the Chevys really looked like they have figured something out. Last time at Pocono, they had 3 cars in the top 10, Kyle Larson, Jimmy Johnson, and Chase Elliott. This time around, they added 1 more in that top 10. The Chevy drivers that finished in the top 10 this go around at Pocono were Alex Bowman, who finished 3rd, his career best, William Byron, who finished 6th, his career best, Chase Elliott, who finished 7th and looked like he was one of the top 4 best cars all day, and Ryan Newman, who finished 8th. Chevy also had 2 other drivers in the top 15 of Austin Dillon, who finished 13th, and AJ Allmendinger, who finished 14th. Now with 6 Chevys in the top 15, this feels like something that hasn't happened in a really long time for Team Chevy. But this has me wondering, did Chevy figure out something that will work at all the tracks that they're going to for the rest of the season? Or was this just, hey, we were here before and we have a notebook on what works? So now tracks that the Cup Series will be visiting for a 2nd time this season that maybe Chevy has a notebook on to build on are Michigan, Bristol, Vegas, Richmond, Dover, Kansas, Martinsville, Texas, and Phoenix. I didn't include Talladega because Chevy pretty much has Talladega kind of figured out, and Talladega does some mess of, hey, here was a random number, you're gonna win. Or if Chevy has figured stuff out for all the tracks, including the ones that we going to for the first time, such as Homestead, Miami, where they could potentially have one of their drivers running for a championship. So now with Pocono in our rearview mirror, we'll move on to what to look ahead to next week at Watkins Glen or the Go Bowling at the Glen. Number 1, Allmendinger's last shot to win. Realistically, going into this Watkins Glen race is AJ Allmendinger's last chance to get himself into the playoffs. Now we all know that this year Indy is the cutoff race, but for AJ Allmendinger, this race at Watkins Glen is his cutoff. So now we'll see if AJ Allmendinger can rise up to the pressure that will be against him going into this weekend's race and get a W to get himself into the playoffs, just like he did in 2014. Number 2, which one of the big three will reign supreme? Now, if we're looking at our race trends from this season, one of the big three is more than likely to win this race. If we look at the past here for the big three, all of them have wins. Kyle Busch won in 2008 and 2013, Kevin Harvick won in 2006, and Martin Truex Jr. is a defending race winner where he won here last season. But now we'll see this week in Watkins Glen if Truex can reel in the competition or if Harvick or Busch will take a more commanding lead on the rest of the field. And number 3, what strategy will work? As we saw earlier in the season at Sonoma, it was, do you need stage points and or want stage points, or do you want track position? At Sonoma, it was the track position game. So now we'll see at Watkins Glen if what strategy of the two will pan out and get a driver in victory lane. And now on to my 3 people to watch for this weekend's race at Watkins Glen. Number 1, Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez is looking to capitalize on a great run that he had at Pocono where he finished 2nd. And last year at Watkins Glen, he won a stage and ended up finishing 3rd. Now we'll see if he can build on that and maybe get his first career win. Number 2 is Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott's had good runs at New Hampshire and Pocono where he's won a stage in each race and ended up getting a top 10 finish. If we take a look back at the earlier road course in the season at Sonoma, Chase Elliott ended up finishing 4th and he ended up scoring the most points of anyone in the field. So now let's see if he can capitalize at Watkins Glen and maybe get that 9 car in victory lane. And number 3, a dark horse to watch this week for me is Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell is a really good road course racer and normally performs pretty well until something goes wrong in his car. As we know, he won the 2016 Road America race in the Xfinity Series, and now he'll look to put on a decent performance this go around at Watkins Glen in the Cup car. So that'll do it for 3 Wide this week. Leave your thoughts about Pocono in the comments section below and what you think is going to happen at Watkins Glen there too. And as always, thanks for watching.